Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Safey alongside Anthony Broom. Chris Ballas not able to make it today. Anthony, we got a ton to get to. We're going to talk 2 Michigan transfer portal commits in basketball, also 4 transfer portal entrances, including Tre Donaldson heading to the portal just days after Michigan's season ended. We are brought to you today by the official game ball of Michigan football, which I have right here. You got the Jumpman logo. You got the Block M on there. Get yours today at biggameusa.com/Wolverines. That is biggameusa.com/Wolverines. Make sure to like the video. If you're watching on YouTube, if you like what Dusty May is cooking up in the transfer portal, leave a comment on Tre Donaldson exiting, what you think of Michigan's 2 transfer commits, Elliot Cadeau and Morez Johnson. We will read those comments after the show, and then how you feel about the additions of potential additions as well. Let us know who you want in the transfer portal. Subscribe to our channel as well, and as always, head to thewolverine.com. Use the promo code UM1 right now for 2 months of premium access for just $1. Anthony, let's start with Elliot.
Can I break some news here quick, since you brought up Tre Donaldson?
Absolutely.
As we press record on this episode, Tre Donaldson has committed to Miami, Florida. So Tre has his school. So do we start with Tre, or where do you want to start with this?
I think Tre and Elliot are a little bit of a combo. Let's start. Let's focus a little bit more on Tre Donaldson. And thank you for breaking that news. I did not see that. So let's focus a little bit more on his exit, and then Elliot Cadeau coming in with 2 years of eligibility left, 6'1", 180-pounder out of North Carolina. We'll touch on his entrance. But this was a surprise. Nothing really shocks you, relatively speaking. But in terms of, your starting point guard who played pretty much the entire season, one of the storylines was he's so valuable we can't take him off the floor. Not that there weren't ups and downs, but he enters the portal a day after Elliot Cadeau comes in. Whether or not Michigan knew Tre was leaving, so they got it point guard, or Tre knew they were getting a point guard, so he decided to leave. I'm not exactly sure on the timeline there, but it does make some sense. Dusty May talked throughout the end of the season when he started to really hammer this home in multiple interviews that they wanted more playmaking. And, Tre Donaldson, maybe not that guy, maybe not as much of a true point guard, a little bit more of a combo guy. You bring in Elliot Cadeau, who is almost too much of a true point guard if you're going to start talking about his flaws, right? But is a true point guard, can play make, can get in the paint, averaged 5.9 assists per game last year. So, what they're losing in Tre Donaldson, they're not necessarily getting back in Elliot Cadeau, but he brings some things to the table that Tre did not. So your thoughts on Tre leaving?
Surprised, because when we are going into this offseason knowing that there are spots to fill in the portal and that Vlad is gone, Danny Wolf is likely gone, and you're looking for things to kind of sink your teeth into. What is the – so I think I asked this question on Monday's show. What is the foundation of this team that was set this year? And I thought Tre Donaldson would be one of those pieces. And with the amount of guards that Dusty likes to play and the amount of guys on the court at a given time that he plays that can handle the basketball, I thought with Cadeau there was room for him here. I think that Tre is a combo guard masquerading as a point guard. And I think that, it's getting less and less this way now in the sport of basketball, but I think point guard, starting point guard for a lot of guys still it's like starting quarterback. It's like you are the man, and all that comes with it. You're the engine that makes the offense run. And, in a lot of ways, Tre was the engine that made this Michigan team run. On the nights he didn't play well, they didn't look very good. And on the nights that he did, it looked like they could have beat just about anyone that they went up against. So surprised that he decided to leave. I know there were a lot of, I hope it wasn't an emotional decision coming off of, you lose to the school you transferred from in the Sweet 16 to Auburn. Michigan brings in another point guard. I think these two could have coexisted, but this is the portal now. If it's, it's sort of like, and there's, this isn't a shot at Tre, but for a lot of these guys, it's like Goldilocks. Oh, this pour just too warm. This pour just too cold. And now they're trying to find whatever their best spot is. And obviously he's going to go to Miami now with They brought in Malik Renault as well this week, who said Michigan was in his top 5, but Michigan, based on what you reported, Clayton, not really recruiting him. So, hey, good luck to him. I'll stop short of calling him a legend, but he was a key figure on a really good first year for Dusty May and this Michigan basketball team. And I think that they will miss him to a certain extent, but you can mitigate that with some of the other moves that are still out there to be made and some of the guys that they already have as well.
For sure. And you're going to have to reconfigure a lot anyway. So this is just one more need that you have as another guard. You probably need one or two. I mean, you definitely need one more, but you need at least one more, potentially more anyway. You lose Justin Pippen. That's a number in the guard rotation. You also have Trey McKinney coming in. Is he more of like the Namari Burnett role in terms of position, not role necessarily in terms of their skill set, but positionally, or is he a backcourt guy with like an LJ Kaysen or Donaldson or Elliot Cadeau? Not exactly sure yet. But yeah, the interesting thing about Tre Donaldson is just the up and down season, but overall was very good and a reason why they were good. I mean, we talked on Monday when we kind of recapped the season and talked about what the legacy of this team was a little bit. And I'm sure we'll get into more of it as the weeks go on, maybe when things settle more. But, one of the reasons why it wasn't just a really good first season and it was a great first season was because Tre Donaldson stepped up in the postseason. I mean, he struggled at the end of the regular season. So did Michigan. They lose 3 out of 4. They lose 3 straight to end the regular season. And then, everyone asked what changed in the postseason, and some things did, right? They played excellent defense starting in the Big Ten tournament, ramped up that side of the basketball. They hit some more shots. I think that they moved the ball better and all these things. But one of the things that was different was that Tre Donaldson stepped up, played a lot better. In the 4-game stretch that will be probably the lasting memory of Tre Donaldson at Michigan is he hits the huge 3 late and then has the layup to win the game against Maryland, and that kicks it off, right? The next game against Wisconsin, Michigan's down 1, hits a 3 to put Michigan up 2 with just under 2 minutes to go in the Big Ten title game against Wisconsin the very next day. And then the next weekend, UC San Diego takes their first lead in the second half, 65-63. 15 seconds later, Tre Donaldson gets it back with a big 3 from the top of the key, a gutsy shot to give Michigan a 1-point lead. And then against A&M, maybe the most improbable of all those shots was the one-handed, left-handed scoop over Solomon Washington that put Michigan up 5 with a minute to go in the round of 32, when A&M kind of came storming back a little bit after Michigan made their initial run to really separate. Then Michigan separates again with a bunch of free throws. But this season isn't what it was without Tre Donaldson. As much as you could criticize some of the struggles as well and what he wasn't, he unlocked a lot for them in the good games, as you mentioned. So I think they'll always have him to thank for part of what this team did. And this is just kind of the nature of the transfer portal, I guess. And him going to Miami suggests to me, especially this quickly too, that, probably he's not shocked he entered the portal based on maybe what people were working on his behalf. And that's just a total guess by me, but that's what it suggests to me.
Yeah. I mean, not to parse too deeply into it, but when the news breaks he's entering the portal, there's an Instagram story where it's just dark screen with a broken heart emoji, and that could mean any number of things. But it's wild now, and I'm not. This isn't a shot at Trey. This isn't a shot at Miami, anyone in particular. But I'm not singling out our company either. This is the graphics. This is what we do. But you see these graphics where there's 2 schools and then the 3rd school they transfer to, or the 3 schools and then the 4th school they transfer to. I'm just like, I'm really fatigued by all of it. Because there is and don't get me wrong, I think NIL and the portal have been great for keeping talented players in college, away from the NBA draft, away from going overseas a little bit too early. But I don't feel like with all of these programs, there's a whole lot of continuity right now. And I don't know how you put the toothpaste back in the tube there. I would have loved to see what year 2 in this system with Maybe a little deeper backcourt around Tre Donaldson would have looked like, but that's I'm not gonna cry for a guy who had a destination 48 hours after he was in the portal. I mean, that to me suggests some other things were at play, and I'm just speculating here. But yeah, it is what it is. And I think at the end of the day, what Michigan winds up needing at their point guard spot is a little more stability, a little less of the roller coaster. And that's what makes this next guy we're about to talk about super interesting to me, because in some respects, kind of the same roller coaster, but a different player and someone who actually has a skill set that might be a little bit better chemically for what Michigan wants to do offensively.
And if Tre did have a destination in mind, or someone surrounding him had multiple destinations in mind before he entered the portal, he wouldn't be the first. He won't be the last. You're seeing it all across the country. My favorite graphic, though, is the Morez Johnson. I think that
one's ridiculous. That's Ohio State, South Carolina, Ohio State, back to South Carolina.
Unbelievable.
It's like, what are we even doing? That's where I am. Like, I do kind of question the guy or the people that are informing what they do, because that's just, I mean, what are we doing here?
That one's hilarious. And then AJ Storr is just in the portal again. St. John's.
Is he really?
Yeah, St. John's, Wisconsin, Kansas, and could be you, investors, possibly you. That is going on. The transfer portal has been insane. Michigan benefiting from it here in the early going as well. And and this is what happens, right? Morez Johnson comes from Illinois. All the fans hate him now. They loved him. Now they hate him. So Michigan fans don't fall into that trap and just think. I guess you can thank Tre or not, or just be happy that some of those moments happen down the stretch this season. But let's talk about Elliot Cadeau. Comes in
really quick. Just note, there is no. I don't think there is any ill will towards Tre Donaldson. Something else Dusty May had said is it's more or less kind of a two-way street where guys got to fit into the plan too. Maybe the plan was for Elliot Cadeau and Tre Donaldson to play together. But then again, like, I don't know. We don't know what those internal conversations were, so it's tough to pinpoint. It's just wild times. But on to Cadeau now.
Yeah, and you see it now too with guys that have 1 year of eligibility left. That might be the year they want to max out the way they can profit as well. So he's definitely in that boat. Elliot Cadeau comes in after 2 seasons at North Carolina. He reclassified up a year to the 2023 class. So that usually doesn't work out when, especially guards, it feels like. You see it more with guards, I guess, but when they reclassify and move up a grade, it worked out for him, I would say, relatively speaking. He's the starting point guard 2 seasons ago now on a North Carolina team that was the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They make the Sweet 16. They lose to Alabama in that game. And then this past year starts again, improved himself quite a bit, averaged 9.2 points, 5.9 assists, and 2.8 rebounds in 27.2 minutes per game. He's one of the top passers in the country. He led the ACC in assists. The stat that stands out to me the most is that he ranked in the 99th percentile nationally with 3.4 assists per game on shots at the rim. So his teammates are getting shots at the rim, easy buckets created by Elliot Cadeau. That is something that Michigan didn't get enough of this past season, and Dusty May was pretty open about that fact. And it's one of the reasons why he kept praising LJ Kaysen towards the end of the season, that he actually could get them some of those looks. The dump off to Vlad that they had against Michigan State on his radio show the next day, they spent like 5 minutes talking about it because there weren't too many of those plays this season. It's a credit to Vlad, Danny, all the other guys for getting their own shot, but he created some of that for them. LJ Kaysen did, and they're going to get more of that with Elliot Cadeau. Turnover issues. 5th worst turnover rate in the ACC. Very high usage, but still, that's percentage-wise. Percentage of his possessions, a lot of turnovers. Some of them decision-making, some of them bad passes, that sort of thing. 3-point shooting has been a big issue for him. Teams can sag off of him a little bit. Improved his number from 19% to 34% this past season, so did work on it in the offseason. I saw an interview with Hubert Davis the other day from last summer where he said that Elliot Cadeau looks like a completely different player, talked about the things he was working on. And one of the things was 3-point shooting. So he improved. And then another concern is just the size defensively with the way Michigan wants to switch, 6'1", 180. But so there's a lot of good here. There's a lot of things that I think you question, and we're just going to have to wait and see how it fits. But definitely bring something to the table that Michigan didn't have much of last season. He doesn't just bring it, he brings it in droves.
I did a radio hit this week on Sirius with John Crispin was on the other end of the phone call, and
big fan.
He compared Cadeau to a guy like Xavier Simpson as a guy who maybe offensively a bit limited, but a playmaker. Again, the word polarizing has come up in a number of spots when it comes to him, and that could just be sour grapes from the North Carolina end, but it is a word you keep seeing when you look him up. But again, to me, it all comes down to how all the puzzle pieces fit together. So you almost kind of make, you rate this edition a bit of an incomplete until you know what he's playing with next to him. I think that they do need to add some shot making on the wing, whether it be via the transfer portal, whether it be, maybe Trey McKinney pops a little earlier than expected. I think he's going to be very good. He's going to have a role. But, if you're telling me the backcourt next year is primarily, Cadeau, let's say Namari Burnett comes back for a sixth season, which is possible, but I don't know how likely it is at this point, along with LJ Case, along with McKinney. And I guess you can kind of throw Roddy Gale into that mix as well. I just feel like they need a little more offense in their backcourt. But, from a playmaking perspective, I think it was Evan Mia who had put this out the other day. Kind of graded, I think, out as an A+ in that category on whatever metrics he was using on his site. So I think it's a solid, shrewd basketball move, and obviously former 5-star guy, and maybe you find a way to get a little more, tap into that a little bit more. Maybe that's something they're able to do. So I'll say in terms of guard development, I think that Hubert Davis in North Carolina have left a little bit on the table in that regard. So that might be something to keep an eye on. I mean, you asked North Carolina this year if they would have rather had what they had or had Caleb Love on their roster. Then again, that was kind of an extracurricular thing that played into his departure a couple of years ago. So Cadeau, it's solid. He's I think still in the top 40, top 50 in terms of transfer portal guys. You've paired him with a pretty good big man that's athletic that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Again, just kind of incomplete on it because we know that there are, it wouldn't be a surprise to have them fill 5-6 spots via the portal.
And part of the incomplete to me is the potential, right? That's why it's incomplete as well, as like he might be a lot better. He is older. So he's kind of the age of now the grade that he's in. He reclassified up, but he's 20 years old. He'll turn 21 before the season. But still, I think there's a lot of upside there, and he will be coached as you.
I'll say this too.
Who's much better than Hubert Davis.
I'll say this too. Running the point on a team, at least this year. Let me go back to last year's numbers real quick. North Carolina was 41st in 2023, 2024 in tempo. This year they were 34th. So you're getting a point guard that is experienced and playing in one of those fast type of systems, which lends itself to some of the turnovers. But this is, it's a fit. It works, and I see what the vision is. There's more work to do here, obviously.
For sure. And that's a great point too. I think he'll allow them to do that. He's really good in the pick and roll, so he'll be able to, to add more there, because you're not going to have Danny Wolf as the guy who's running some of the most pick and rolls on your team this next year. And if you do, it's an absolute bonus, right? There's obviously a slight chance that he could come back, but wouldn't expect it. It's also worth mentioning when you look at it too, North Carolina, he's the freshman point guard on that team that reclassified. They're 15th in the country last year and 2 years ago now in offensive efficiency. And this past season, when they made the tournament, but probably shouldn't have, they were 21st. So he's still running efficient offenses, had much less shooting, much less talent around him this past season, and they were still efficient. So a lot to like here about the pickup. And I'm sure he'll be mentioned as we move into Morez Johnson Jr. as well, because big man point guard pairing, pretty important, especially in this offense. But before we do that, we have to talk about the official Michigan game ball, the 2025 official Michigan Jordan Elite Fly football just dropped for the first time ever. Jordan Brand's signature innovation, performance, and swagger are hitting the turf in the big house. Also got it right here in my house. Boom. 360 view. This is the official game ball of the Wolverines, and you will see it in action all season long as Michigan builds on its championship legacy. The football is designed for precision, control, and game-changing performance. Here's what makes it special. Signature Maze, Jumpman, and Block M logos, iconic symbols of innovation and performance, engineered to Michigan's QB specs, designed with input and guidance from Wolverines coaches and players. Pebbled lace, a visible colored maze lace reinforcement flap, and overlay stripe technology for better optimal off-lace control. Handcrafted in the USA by Big Game Football Factory, and every ball comes with a certificate of authenticity. This isn't just a football. It is a piece of Michigan history, perfect for true Michigan fans to display it or give it as a gift. Be among the first to own it. Snap yours today at biggameusa.com/Wolverines. Again, that is biggameusa.com/Wolverines. All right. Michigan lands Illinois transfer Morez Johnson Jr. 3 years of eligibility left after wrapping up his freshman season at Illinois. 6'9", 255 pounds. Really a joy to watch play basketball this past season. He did not play against Michigan because he had broke his wrist a couple weeks prior against Michigan State on one of the more crazy athletic plays you'll see. Blocks a transition layup attempt by Trey Holloman of Michigan State. Two-handed block in transition, running the floor back. You're going to get that type of motor from him on every possession. He's going to play more than the 18 minutes he played per game this past season. So, but I wouldn't expect that motor to slow down at all. This is kind of your 6'9" replacement for Vladislav Golden. I would predict here, and you still need another big or two to pair with him, along with Will Cheddar and Oscar Goodman being able to play the four a little bit potentially if he's ready to go in what would technically be his redshirt freshman season. But Anthony, I was told that less than 12 hours after Michigan lost to Auburn, Akeem Miskadeen, Michigan's assistant coach, hopped on a plane to see Morez Johnson. They get that one done. It kind of reminds you last year of when they kept going like batting 1,000 on guys that were official visitors. And one, it speaks to, all right, the guys we want, we can get on campus, and the guys we want us to see the vision, are impressed by the coaching staff. But Morez Johnson comes here. He averaged 7 points, 6.7 rebounds last year. One of the better rebounders in the country. His 17.2% offensive rebounding rate would have ranked first in the Big Ten by almost 3% had he met the 40% minutes threshold. And he only didn't because of that injury that held him out, I believe, 8 games or something like that. But then this stat stands out the most too. To talk about one with Cadeau and one with Johnson. This is the one I would look at. Illinois rebounded 41.6% of their missed shots when he was on the floor and 32.1% when he was off. I mean, he's that big of a difference maker on the glass. And we talked about, okay, Elliot Cadeau, he brings the playmaking that Dusty May said they didn't have this past season. What else did they talk about all year long that they needed? Physicality. They needed to be better on the glass. And this guy brings that in droves. So you add something, kind of a different element here while also replacing Vlad Golden.
Yeah, and I love Vlad Golden. I love what he was able to do. Watching him at FAU, obviously a pleasure to get to watch him at Michigan this season, but would get pushed around a little bit, against teams in the top half of this league. And Morez Johnson Jr. is not going to have that issue at all. I think he plays bigger than 6'9" because of his effort. We've had people ask, well, how do you mitigate the loss of that size? Well, when you rebound the heck out of the basketball and you play physically and you live up to the challenge, that's a big part of it too. So we've talked about how, winning there are things Dusty wants to do while holding up in the front court in a Big Ten style of roster. And this addresses that in a nice way. And he's not, you look at his shot chart, it's all in the paint. He's not a guy that's going to step out and shoot, mid-range jumpers or even shoot any threes like Vlad would do now and then. This is a guy that I think, again, just a solid, shrewd top 30 addition, but addresses one of their biggest needs in a big way. Kind of reminds me of, at least from a production standpoint, kind of you should probably expect about what they got from Terrace Reed last year, just in terms of production. But this guy doesn't have oven mitts or cast iron skillets for hands either. He's not going to turn over the basketball like that. I like it a lot, and I think that he is, at least right now. I know Illinois had a Visic, but he's got the clearest path to playing time as probably anyone on this roster at the moment. So nice addition for them. The opportunity's there, and excited to see how they how he grows.
For sure. And I think he's going to look to expand his game, though. Every shot, like you said, last year was in the paint, didn't attempt anything outside of the paint, wasn't asked really to do much offensively in terms of running stuff for him, but he created his own offense. 30.8% of his field goal attempts came on second chance opportunities. So, okay, he's one of those guys. You don't need to feed him a ton for him to still make an impact on scoring. And he had an 8-game stretch there. I believe it was 5 times in double figures in 8 games until he got hurt. He had 17 and 5 against Michigan State before he went down with the injury on that ridiculous play and broke his wrist. But yeah, I think that there's room for him to grow that offensive role. I have heard that he can shoot the ball, just wasn't asked to do it. And a lot of big guys are kind of working on that behind the scenes. Like if you watch some of these guys in practice and they're shooting, they can definitely do it. It's just like, where do you find those looks within the flow of the offense? Is it a better shot at time? You got to get it good enough for a guy to, it to be a better shot than somebody else. I think Dusty May talked about it with Vlad. I want to go back and get the exact quote, but didn't he say like you need to be kind of working on it at a high level behind the scenes for like a year or two before you can really debut it? And Vlad hadn't attempted a 3 in his entire career until this season at Michigan, and he hit some big ones. He went a long stretch there without hitting any, because I think he got a little overboard with shooting some after he hit 3 in that Northwestern game. But so there's room there for him to expand the game. You mentioned Tomislav Visic that he played alongside at Illinois. Visic was the 5, and Morez Johnson, when he entered the starting lineup, was the 4. So he can play that way defensively. He's versatile enough. If you did have to have him switch on the perimeter, he could do it. I think that he's penciled in right now as their 5, but it all depends on who you can get as the big man next to him, I think. And we'll talk about that here shortly. But it's going to be interesting. I think you have a pick and roll partner for Elliot Cadeau. I think that, his ability to finish down low, he made 64% of his twos this past year, but that number was 70% in a 20-game stretch after he kind of settled in starting in late November. So that's a really, really good rate. So he's going to be able to finish some of those buckets or those shots that Elliot Cadeau creates for him. 2 lob dunks last year. I would expect that to reach 10 plus this coming season, which is nice. Michigan didn't have many of those this past season either.
Well, another stat of the day, maybe talk about players that have played on teams that play fast. Illinois 17th in tempo this year on KenPom. So he's used to running up and down the floor too, and that's exciting. So a nice box check with, and that's not the be all end all. There's a lot of other guys from a lot of different programs they're looking at, but the fact that it looks like you've gotten 2 starters now that are used to playing fast, playing up-tempo basketball, I think that's great. And that, you have to spend, when you have guys that have done it, you spend less of your time teaching it. And I think that's a good thing.
For sure. And we have to mention the upside here too. 3 years left of a guy who's probably not going pro until he exhausts his eligibility. And then who knows? I could see it. He's only 6'9". That'll hurt him. But, if he can switch and if he does expand his game to being able to hit some jumpers, maybe down the road. But that's down the road. Like everything's year to year now in college basketball. But if you get this guy for 2-3 years, that is really nice for your long-term future. Not everything's just for next season, although it kind of is in college basketball right now. But it's worth mentioning.
And of course, he could ball out and go grab a bag from someone else after this next year. That's where we're at too.
You got to retain. Okay, let's talk about what's next in the transfer portal for Michigan. Worth mentioning, the week-long dead period starts today, April 3 to April 10, and that dead period is in place, Anthony. So coaches can go to the Final Four, go to the NABC convention. 7 full days, though. It seems like that's enough time for them to go to that convention, attend the Final Four, also go to the bars, and also recover from their hangovers.
Maybe we're just built different, I guess. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, do they stick around for title game? I don't know, but title game's Monday night late, so you're traveling to. Yeah, I can see it, I guess, but come on, this calendar's already kind of ridiculous. To a certain extent, I get why the football portal calendar is in the winter because it's between semesters and you get guys in there and able to enroll. But we're talking about guys that aren't going to be here till the summer now. So the fact that we've done all of this against the backdrop of Michigan, the first week it's recruiting the transfer portal, they're preparing for games in Atlanta. So I don't know what the solution to that is, but you're more or less, well, there's that. And then I'm sure you were going to bring this up too. We've got the house settlement thing coming up on Monday, whereas a lot of these collectives are going to try and pay these guys out while they still can. So it's an interesting juxtaposition between coaches not really around to host visits to dead period and then so much change coming before Monday, or maybe not at all. Who knows?
I will say 10, 15 years ago and beyond, in the past, there probably wasn't as much working in the hotel rooms down there at the Final Four this year in San Antonio. These coaches are going to be pretty locked in because it doesn't stop just because you can't, just because it's a dead period doesn't mean they can't be on the phone, texting, Zoom calls, talking to agents. All that is just around the clock now. There just won't be visits and you can't go and visit guys like how Michigan flew out and saw Morez Johnson. So, and like you said, that's where I was going to go with it as well. The April 7th is there are going to be a ton of commitments before then because you're signing these deals with collectives that they feel will be binding regardless of the outcome of the final approval of the House settlement, which comes on April 7th. So that leads us into another guy, the number one player in the portal, Yaxel Lendenborg, who is likely and reportedly going to decide here before the April 7 pretty much deadline. It's not a deadline, but it kind of is if you want to get that paper. And he may be getting that paper from the NBA as well. He's also declared there. This is a UAB transfer, 6'9", 240 pounds, plays the 4, plays the 5. He would be your front court pairing with Morez Johnson if he comes to Michigan. Michigan reportedly in the top 2 right now with Kentucky. And this is a really interesting player who started in JUCO. He's from Puerto Rico, but this past year just blew up. 17.7 points, 11.4 rebounds, 4.2 assists per game. Essentially the 6'9" Danny Wolf. I mean, he would fill that role beautifully, and then you'd pair him with the 6'9" Vlad Golden, and then you'd be rocking and rolling just a little bit shorter than last season. Short Kings, even though they're not short Kings, they're 6'9". But rumor has it Dusty May visited him in Chicago. Haven't confirmed that. Mark Pope, coach of Kentucky, did the same thing in recent days. This is a dynamic player. He's number one in the portal for a reason.
I love this guy. If this would be the one where I get on the bat phone and call our newfound friends that are associated with the Oracle company, right? And
associated.
It's, you know what I mean? I love this guy, and a guy that 17 averages a double per night. Again, it was in a different conference, but this is why you have the money cannons, and he's going to get paid a lot. Some rumors saying that he could get up to $4 million. Who knows? Maybe it gets pushed beyond that, which is kind of nuts. But he's also seems like he's going to test the NBA draft waters. I would love it. I think it's a perfect plug and play situation, especially, you're operating under the assumption that Danny Wolf's not coming back. And gosh, even if somehow he did, and you were able to land both, which is, pie in the sky, shouldn't even mention it as a possibility. That's a situation you can figure out.
Money wise, maybe not, but
money wise, yeah. I mean, That's a totally different topic.
You figure that out. I agree, though. Yeah,
that's
figure it all out.
Yeah, I'll take the guy every time that's averages 17 and 7, 11 and a half rebounds per game. You know, has shot the three at like a respectable volume for a big guy. You know, he was 25 of 70 last year, 35.7%. Things move so quickly because we sit here today and a lot of the reporting around him has been, it looks like it might be a battle between Michigan and Kentucky. Owen Freeman at one point was going to be a battle between Michigan and Gonzaga until it wasn't. Someone else swoops in. He winds up at Creighton. So for me, I mean, I tend to still kind of take the field when it comes to, is it Michigan or someone else for Lendeborg? But man, oh man, I mean, that would be, you start talking about like the chemical mixture of what the team looks like. I'd love the front court in a much different way than I'd loved last year's front court. And I think that would be kind of the rising tide that lifts everyone else up here. But again, I think it would be an overstatement to call it a pipe dream. It's just, I think there's we have a long way to go when it comes to that, especially when you're talking about a guy that is looking at testing the NBA draft as well.
Mm-hmm. But he will have likely a college destination fallback option in the next 3-4 days. So I agree. There's a long way to go, but it's not going to, it's a short time to get there, as the song says.
That's right.
Because it is going to be expedited here. So we'll see. We'll spend a lot more time talking about him if Michigan gets him. So, we're not going to break down his game too much, but that's kind of the domino, I guess, is the reason why we did spend a few minutes on him, because it feels like everything else is in a holding pattern. You have to know how much you're paying him if you get him to know how much you can pay other guys. You have to know who you want to pair him with. I think shooting is clearly the biggest need left beyond the big guy there. But just capable players at multiple positions here that you still need. Worth mentioning, Austin Rapp is a guy they're in on as well, transferring from Portland. 14 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists last year, rounding up on some of those numbers, but was just a freshman on a bad team, but an Australian. Dusty loves international big men, so we'll see on that one. You've been putting together the fantastic hot boards pretty much every other day now because there are so many updates and things move so fast. Any other guys catch your eye or anything that you feel like is worthy of discussion? Again, things move so fast, so it's hard to say, but there are some really intriguing names on there.
Yeah, I would say the one in particular that stood out to me, and it's still early on in him figuring things out, is I like guys that have played in conference. So Rodney Rice to me would be almost the ideal pairing with a guy like with Elliot Cadeau, someone who, and again, just sort of lamenting the state of college sports with all the logos you've had on the graphic, but his head coach left this time. So he spent his first 2 years at Virginia Tech, this past year at Maryland. We were in the building that Friday night when they just absolutely rained hell from above on Illinois. He had 26 points in that game. So maybe my opinion of him is kind of skewed by that. We've seen him, I think, 3 times in person this year now. And I think he's a dog. I think he'd be a perfect fit, especially if a guy like Namari Burnett left.
I have a verbal meme on Rodney Rice. Rodney Rice is Trey Holloman running down the floor trying to attempt a layup, and Morez Johnson blocking him with 2 hands, flying, leaping in the air, is Michigan admissions. He's a 3-year guy, hasn't graduated. I don't know. But he'd be an incredible addition.
Yeah, I always forget about that dastardly admissions slant. But
those
other guys,
admissions, yeah.
I know. I mean, there's so many guys. I will have, with things the way they are right now, probably do one more hot board this week because there's a couple guys that have come off the board. Not a whole lot has changed with current Michigan targets. I'll just throw a name out there that I like that seems to be picking up steam, at least nationally, with I see Kentucky's been in on him. Kansas has been in on him. The guy that you wrote about, where's his name? Bashir from Monmouth, who made 127 threes last year. Sam Walters leaves. You need some shooting off your bench. That guy is extremely interesting to me. And we'll see. Just haven't heard. That's the thing, is that we get these flurry of this guy's heard from Michigan. This guy's heard from Michigan. And you get yourself up to like almost at one point, I think there were 25 names on this board. But really, when it comes down to it, we heard. I mean, Joe Tipton had reported about Cadeau on Sunday afternoon, I think it was, and then he's committed Monday. So typically, it seems like with Michigan targets, it comes together somewhat quickly. And there could be guys out there that we haven't heard them linked to yet. Some guys that they were linked to, Michigan wasn't even really recruiting. So that's just where we're at this time.
I was going to say that happened with Renault. It's funny you mentioned Sam Walters with Abdi Bashir, who is 6'7", 160. I did say on the message board the other day when it came out that he at least had heard from them, he's the guard version of Sam Walters, because it feels like he can shoot like crazy. 6'7", 160. I don't know what you do with him. I love the height. I don't know what you do with him at 160 defensively, but you just figure all that out and use him as a specialist, and someone's going to do that. He'll probably get paid handsomely to do it. Maybe there's more to his game. Don't know enough about him, but so yeah, keep it locked at thewolverine.com. Things are moving fast with transfer targets, and of course, if Michigan lands them, we will spend all the time in the world talking about, not all the time in the world, but a lot of time talking about how they fit, not just when they commit, but as other guys come in, as they fit with the other pieces. It's going to be really interesting to see it come together. Anthony, let's switch to football real quick, kind of recap the week so far there. We have spoken with multiple assistant coaches, Grant Newsome, Lou Esposito. We talked a little bit about what we learned from them on Monday, but we had some player availability yesterday. Donovan McCulley, wide receiver, offensive lineman Giovanni El-Hadi, and wide receiver Frederick Moore, who looks like he had his man year, as Jim Harbaugh would say. Gained 11 pounds. He's up to 191 now. Looking good. It feels like he's confident about the work he's putting in. The biggest thing that right now is just on my mind when it comes to football is how this spring game is going to work when you have two healthy quarterbacks, Jaden Davis and Bryce Underwood. And how are you going – do you bring in Colin Kaepernick to play a quarter? What the hell do you do with this quarterback situation? And it is somewhat concerning. I know you get Chase Herbstreit comes in the summer, but Davis Warren's hurt. Mikey Keene, we'll see when he comes back from injury as well. There aren't the numbers there that there were.
That's a huge concern at the moment. And it's almost like, for as much talk as there's been about, Chip Lindsey's coming in and they're going to be more explosive, they're going to throw down the field. I almost wonder if the spring game isn't just all handoffs, because you don't want to get any of those guys. And those guys aren't ever live anyways in the spring game when it comes to the quarterbacks. But yeah, I don't know how you do that right now. Is it one guy is all-time quarterback for both teams each half? I don't know. That could be a solution.
How does that limit?
I mean, it's not any less playing time. It's just you get a half and you get a half, and that's going to be how it goes. Or maybe it's just one all-time quarterback for a quarter, and Jaden Davis plays the last. I don't know what it looks like. And the nation won't know what it looks like at large because they're not televising this thing
for 8 days
live.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting storyline. I think I don't even know how consequential it is for the spring game in general. It's just now we're looking at some really sketchy quarterback depth. And the thing with the guy like Keene is that the season doesn't start 2 weeks from now. The spring game is 2 weeks from now. So does he have enough time to get relatively healthy to where he can be in the mix for fall camp and be healthy for the season? It's possible. I don't know what the extent of whatever he's dealing with is, and I don't know if you're going to just be able to go portal for a guy either, because spring portal, it's right. I think that's for rounding out your depth and guys that are looking to transfer out in spring, especially at the quarterback position. I just don't know how much we heard that they were going to kick the tires on a portal quarterback last year after spring ball, and nothing really ever materialized. So I don't know what they'll do there. I think in general, the takeaway has been, we talked to, McCulley and Fred Moore yesterday. They are going to throw the ball more. You don't pay Bryce Underwood what Michigan did. You don't bring in a guy like Chip Lindsey who has experience generating explosives through the air. They're going to throw the ball more. It might be more closer to true balance for Michigan. I know they always talk about that, but The guys are excited for that, and they're taking shots down the field. And they've got a young quarterback in Bryce Underwood that seems like he's able to make plays in that area. So I go into everything with guarded optimism, especially after last year. We thought they just kind of figured it out in the offensive line and the run game would carry them. But in the aggregate, I think things are better, and those guys seem pretty excited for it.
They do. Everything's got to fit together. I remain a little skeptical, but because we did hear a lot about explosiveness going into last year, but at the same time, those guys also learned with us, right? That, okay, maybe it didn't work out. Now we're seeing, coming off of last year, knowing what that was, that we are more explosive. I think Donovan McCulley's a big piece in that because he has big playability. And then if you get some guys to improve around you, and then maybe you add a wide receiver in the spring transfer portal, then it's possible you get there. The offensive line still has to be there. You got to protect to have enough time to throw the ball down the field, unless Bryce Underwood's going to buy himself time every single snap. But I am somewhat encouraged there. Anything else you heard this week that you found interesting at all?
Not really. I feel I don't want to say less confident about the offensive line, but whenever I've covered the sport now, whether it be college or NFL, for a decade. I've been watching football my entire life, and whenever the narrative shifts to you're just having more fun now, that concerns me a bit when it comes to the offensive line and how it's coached and all that. And it's not a shot. It's just, I think that's the reality of their situation, where it seems last year, it seemed clear as day that the quarterback position could very well hold them back from reaching some of the goals that they have. Whereas this year, I feel like the offensive line, and to a lesser extent, the wide receivers, that's kind of clear as day, might be the thing that's holding them back right now. And I don't know that just joking around more in meeting rooms or bringing in a couple of analysts really changes that. I think they need better players there. And I don't know if the guys that are long-term solutions will be ready yet. So I don't want to say it's a lack of confidence or I feel less confident, but I don't feel more confident, I guess is the best way I'd put it.
I think part of the thing there that they probably had to do better, and it was a lesson, is that you had a bunch of new guys in kind of roles they hadn't been in before, trying to deal with the ups and downs of a season that a lot of them hadn't experienced before because they had won so much. Those guys weren't as big of a part of it, right? The line last year was pretty much the backup line from the year before, plus Josh Preeb coming in from Northwestern. So part of it might be that, hey, we may lose a game. We may have a bad drive. We may have a sack fumble, and then we put the defense in a bad spot and we got to go put together a crucial drive or whatever it is. How do we respond? Part of me feels like that, I don't know, they're just trying to be more connected there, but I agree that doesn't necessarily make you feel great about like what what the issues are and what the solutions are. But we shall see, and we'll see if they add there too after the spring as well. But I think that is going to be our show. Covered a lot from basketball to football. So thank you everybody for watching and listening. Again, like the video if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, head to thewolverine.com. You can get 2 months of premium access for just $1 if you use the promo code UM1, and we will see everyone next time.